New York, 4th of December, 6:46 a.m. United Healthcare Insurance Arm CEO Brian Thompson is shot 3 times, killing him. Interestingly, the bullets apparently had on them 3 words: delay, deny and depose. Now, those are 3 words from the Handbook of Insurance Adjusters on how to treat claims. Insurance is a funny business. You pool risk from a whole number of different people and then you pay out to those who suffer an unexpected event within that group. But of course it sets up rather perverse incentives. The incentive of the insurance company, of course, is the higher your profits are, the lower the amount that you pay out, and you get to keep the difference between what you raise and what you ultimately pay out. And therefore it creates an incentive to delay, deny and depose in order to avoid having to pay out. Now, this is an interesting chart that has been doing the rounds. This is the insurance denial rates by various different companies. Now, as you can see, the industry average is about 16%. United Healthcare is double that at 32%. So, even though I'm going to go on to talk briefly about the individual concerned here, I don't think it particularly matters. What matters is that in that 32%, certainly in that additional 16%, you would expect there's a lot of people who would have the motivation or the desire to do something like this, even if they don't have the balls to carry it out themselves. Now, before I go on to talk about Luigi, I will just quickly note that it is odd that we know so much about him, and yet somebody like this Thomas Crook character we still know next to nothing about. Just thought I'd slip that in there. Now, in the case of this Luigi, and like I said, I don't think it particularly matters whether it's him or we later learn, there is more to this story, or perhaps it's somebody else entirely, they're going to have a similar profile to this, especially given what was written on those bullets. Luigi had rather severe back problems. As you can see here, this is something that he posted about a rather drastic surgical intervention that he had had that left his life changed very much for the worst, and I only assume that we are going to discover that some part of his treatment was delayed, denied or deposed, and this was what got him rather upset in this case. Other things that we know about Luigi is that he was a bit of a reader. Now, he even did a review on Ted Kaczynski's book, Industrial Society and Its Future. Now, Kaczynski, of course, was the bomber who sent parcel bombs off to various places and caused a lot of disruption. Now, of course, we can't support that sort of thing. We condemn it entirely. But what Luigi apparently says here is that he had the balls to recognise that peaceful protest has got us absolutely nowhere. And he says, at the end of the day, he's probably right. When all other forms of communication fail, violence is necessary to survive. Why should we have any qualms about burning them down? Now, you can understand why, with an outlook like that and pain like that and the denial rates as they were, why this situation might have come to a head. But again, it's not about him. This is about a mood, because you will have seen that a lot of people have regarded him as something of a hero for his actions. And this is not new. This is, well, take the Joker, for example. It was a surprise hit. Why was it such a surprise hit? Because a guy who was beat up, tossed out, ignored, rejected by society, took it in his own hands to do something rather drastic. And that resonated with people. Just as the assassination of this CEO has again also resonated with people. Perhaps it's the case that the American dream is now truly just that. It is a dream, it is a fantasy, it is a phantasm. It's gone. And I think the key point here is that you can only push men so far before they break. Now, it's not just, of course, young men that are breaking. Young women are breaking as well, but for the opposite reason in this case. This is a post that I put up recently where I sort of pointed out that young men have been denied everything for several decades and it is breaking them. Young women have been denied nothing and it is also breaking them. And I've got a picture of that Lily Tart who recently slept with 100 men and then discovered that it did not gel with her soul and psyche. But this is where we got to in society. We've had a society that has for many decades told men that their concerns are illegitimate, that they are wrong to have these concerns, that the fact that it's men making them is in of itself proof that these concerns are illegitimate, whereas women are being told, no, there is no point of liberation that will ever be bad. At a certain point, this stops being a problem just for young men and for young women. It starts becoming a problem for the elite, as Brian Thompson discovered in his particular case. I'm going to refer now to a Politico article, quite an old one, 2014 I believe, from this chap, Nick, how do you pronounce that, Horner. Now, he was an early investor in Amazon. He was the first non-family member to invest alongside Jeff Bezos in Amazon. And as you could imagine, he is a rather rich person. And he starts off the article talking about the obscene level of wealth that he has, huge private yachts, all that kind of stuff. Now, you might think, okay, well, why is that interesting to me? But actually, he makes a very interesting point. Now, let me read from a section of this. He says, I'm not the smartest guy you ever meet or the hardest working. I was a mediocre student. I was not technical at all. I can't write a word of code. What sets me apart, I think, is a tolerance for risk and an intuition about what will happen in the future. Seeing where things are heading, the essence of entrepreneurship. And what do I see in our future right now? I see pitchforks. He says that at a time that people like you and me are thriving beyond the wildest dreams of any plutocrats in history, the rest of the country, the 99.99%, is lagging far behind. That the gap between the haves and have-nots is getting really worse. He goes on to talk about how the middle class is being dissolved. They will go away. We will just have the obscenely rich and the workers. He talks about how society is breaking down, well, or you could say perhaps reverting to feudalism. And he says that this is not going to last. This will break down. The pitchforks will come out. That's certainly not a new idea. I was talking to Carl about this, and he pointed out Plutarch. Plutarch was a writer writing in 75 AC, and he was discussing the histories of the Greek republics. Now, there's quite a long text here which you can go and get into if you want, but the basic story is this: Athens and Sparta were both ruled by kings, absolute kings. The Spartan king recognised that basically he had taken too much, he had had it too good for too long, and therefore he decided to disperse power and basically strengthen the middle class. He decided to return power to a Senate and work with that mechanism. The Athenian king did not. They grasped and they held on to everything that they had. But what I want to focus on is this particular section. He says, for indeed the prerogatives being thus reduced within reasonable bounds, the Spartan kings were at once freed from further jealousies and consequential dangers, and never experienced the calamities of their neighbours of Methins and Argos, who, by maintaining their prerogative too strictly, for want of yielding a little to the population, lost it all. That, I think, is the danger for the elite class at the moment. Now, in this Luigi chap's case, I think he has almost certainly been planning what he has been planning for perhaps quite a while now, certainly before the election. And therefore, the snapback that came from the political sphere was probably too late for Brian Thompson. I suspect that Luigi had been, putting wheels in motion for quite a while. Trump has been a massive shake-up to the system. He was, of course, fiercely rejected by the elites who wanted to hang on to every shred of power that they have. But now Trump is coming in, he's shaking things up. He is appointing RFK to lead the health agency. And again, the elites, they're trying to resist every single step of this. But my view is that they should be getting down on their knees and thanking Trump. Trump is not the guy who comes in and smashes the system. Trump is the guy who comes in and renews the system, who disperses that power enough that the whole thing doesn't break down violently. They have been resisting him. They should have been thanking him. It really did feel like for quite a long time that there was no political solution. You know, I am perhaps as surprised as you are that Trump was allowed to win in the recent election. But for the elite, whether they recognise it or not, it is a very, very good thing for them. If they yield a little at this point, if they give back some of the power, if they stop grasping, if the system stops being rigged against the average person, and if the middle class is allowed to flourish, if young men are allowed to flourish, if some boundaries are put on young women so they don't spiral in the way that tart Lily Phillips have, then we have an opportunity for a renewal to put this thing back on track for at least a couple more decades before the elite start inevitably grasping too much and rigging the system in their favour again. I'll leave you this one thought, post that I saw on Twitter. They're advertising on whatever that is, LinkedIn or something, for a couple of security guards to work alongside Larry Fink, the boss of BlackRock. And as somebody points out here, guys, they're offering 80 grand and a gun and access to the CEO of BlackRock. Now, once again, just to be clear, I condemn in the strongest possible terms shooting CEOs of public companies, even distasteful ones. But I think the point is this. If there is a little fear of the people, you will get a better behaved elite.